Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have another review for you guys. This is the Achilles Sidesword from Poker Armory. I ordered this sidesword along with the two Parry daggers that I previously reviewed, which I will link below, and you can also find it in my channel. It was my last video. Unlike the Parry daggers, which I didn't get too much time with them to do a review, this one I've spent a lot of time with. I've spent many hours sparring with it, practicing with it, and also just doing flow work here in my apartment or outside. And I believe I've got a really good informed opinion about this product from Poker Armory for you guys. Okay, so the first area I'm going to cover on this sword will be all of the good things. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because there's very few negative elements to this sword. This is a really nicely designed sword. And the things I'm going to talk about towards the end of the video are more of improvements that could make the sword better, or they're somewhat personal preferences that may or may not be someone else's preference when buying a sword, especially from different areas of the world. For instance, I do believe Poland, Russia, and whatnot, they like to have their swords with a specific heft to them for when they fight, which we may not like over here where I train. But before I get into that stuff, let's talk about what makes this sword good. So up here, I'm going to be putting a little bit of statistics from their website for you guys, and we'll talk about, I think, the areas of the sword that matter for people who are going to want to purchase this weapon. And I think one of the more important parts of this weapon is the fact it's designed, like a lot of swords that are coming out recently from long swords to side sword, with a very deep fuller. That deep fuller allows for creating thicker edges, regardless of whether they taper or not, which is better for sword fighting in general, for finding and making the edge of the sword more robust, and thus it chips a little less, and thus it lasts longer. Plus it also makes a sword feel better when you're actually finding and binding with people. It also keeps the sword light. So you can have these thicker edges, and this sword can still weigh 950-ish grams. So it's a very light sword because of that design. Now, the edges, because they are allowed to be made a bit thicker, are very robust. So up at the top, it does taper to a thinner edge here and thicker at the bottom. So when you're finding with the sword, you can go deeper into your sword and find their weapon. And you actually, once you get to either the mezza spada or more the, I guess you would say more of the forte down here, the stronger part of the sword, it does have a lot of presence. It actually starts feeling like, the analogy to use, it starts feeling as strong as more of a back sword, more of the sort of weight and heft you get from more of an arming sword because of the thickness of this edge. Now, I'm not saying it handles like that or it does have, you know, the clearing capability of an arming sword, but it's starting to feel like that because of how thick this edge is. Now, because of that design, they've been able to put a very wide tip on it, which will keep you pretty safe. The sword does have a edge taper. I think it's going to vary, but like it goes about 3 millimeters or so to a little bit thicker down here. And my opinion might be a little too thick in this area of the sword, but I'll get into that in the end of the video. And it also does have, in the width of the sword, it also does have a small taper as well, which I think is about just right for this design of sword. So those elements of design, sorry, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that's the flex. This sword has 10 kilograms of flex. Now, that's pretty good. It might be a little bit more heftier than certain other swords, but once again, based upon demographics and what people like, I think 10 kilograms is a good, you know, a good area to sort of start with for a sword. It's safe, but also it doesn't bend too much so that when you cut, the sword still feels solid as you're moving it through the air, or as you parry someone's weapon out of the way, it's not going to get too wobbly. So I personally like it. Okay, so point of balance is approximately right here on the sword. So it's about normal for most side swords. I mean, they'll vary a little bit, but I think this one is about right for this design of the sword. Actually, I'm going to sort of back off of talking about handling and how the sword is weighted towards the end of the video. So I think I'll actually just jump into durability. One more thing I'm splicing in here that I shot a little bit after, hopefully it won't make the flow of the video too bad, is I forgot to put in how this weapon works with other sort of 5-finger heavier duty gloves. So far, now this one, keep in mind, is for right hand, so it's got this ring. You could request from them on their website to not have that ring to make it more ambidextrous, which is what I think I would do next time if I ordered this weapon. But it fits. So this is the Infinity Gauntlet, which I got many reviews for down below. Check them out. Works really nicely. So I can use this with it. It does impede on the plastic here as I hit my roof of the inside of the finger across the cross guard. But I think with most 5-finger gloves, whether it's resin-based or the Pro Gauntlet, you are going to have that problem of having whatever the padding is on the inside rub against the cross guard. I don't find it affects me much at all, so I guess that's neither here nor there. But I think if I was using, which I probably wouldn't be, if I was using this glove as my dedicated side sword glove, I might go in there and trim out some of that inside plastic because you actually don't need it. I don't even think you need it for longsword, but I obviously wouldn't want to experiment with that with longsword because they hit so much harder. But for side sword, because your finger is hanging out over the cross guard and has all this protection here, you absolutely don't need that plastic on the inside. So I'd probably trim away some of that so I could actually get my finger to actually rest on the cross guard. I think that's the only thing I'd improve, and once again, I think that's going to be a problem with most heavy-duty 5-finger gloves. So far, if this glove fits, I can tell you right away that the Pro Gauntlet will fit, because I have a friend who has a Pro Gauntlet right now. Also, the 5-finger sparring glove, which, if you give me a second, I'm going to cut this here. Okay, here's my hacked up 5-finger sparring glove. It is missing its big pointer finger there because it eventually fell off. But what I can show with this is the fact that, once again, it fits in this. In fact, this one fits with a heck of a lot of room. What you do get on this one, which once again could be fixed, is if you have this ring guard here, this part of the glove runs into the ring guard. Not too much. It's like ever so slightly. So you could do two things. If this became your main side sword glove, you could actually trim it a little bit, the sort of foam right there. Or once again, you could order this sword without the actual knuckle guard, making it ambidextrous, plus at the same time now eliminating this part here running into any sort of upper part of the glove. So I did also try this glove with my Superior Fencing heavy clamshell gloves. I couldn't quite, it was like maybe 2 or 3 millimeters. I couldn't quite get it in here. So it was close. It was close. But so far, you can see like sort of the main gloves that are out there right now, you would say, are the Pro Gauntlet, the Infinity Gauntlet, and 5-finger sparring gloves, right? 4 5-finger gloves. And all 3 of them work with this. So that's a really good thing to know. So far, nothing has come loose. The grip, once again, it's only been a month or a little over a month, so the grip is holding up, but it's leather. It'll probably wear over time. The pommel is holding up. It is peened. So far, so good out of just taking regular side sword shots. And I've been going against some Albion side swords and some heavier side swords. And these, I even went and sparred against an arming sword, but it wasn't like full speed sparring. It was a little bit slower speed. And the sword held up pretty good in all areas, from the actual edge to the cross guards. And this one comes with, obviously, the knuckle guard, but it also does come with the top of the hand knuckle guard as well, which is quite nice. All of that seems to be very robust, very well put together. And same thing I mentioned with on my Parry daggers, the gap they leave between the actual cross guard and the blade itself is almost non-existent. It's very small. So very well thought out and well designed sword. So overall, talking about the good points of the sword, I really like this sword. It is a very good cutter, and it is a very good sword to flow around with. It's nice, it's solid, and it only has a couple areas of which I would like to see improvements on, which one may be a personal preference which no one else cares about besides me. So I think I'll get into those things now. Okay, so the first thing about this sword is it was holding up when bent for the first little bit, but now it is kind of once in a while, especially if I do a big thrust on someone, you can see it is, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it on camera, it is losing and not completely springing back. Now, it's straight again now, right? But on hard thrusts, now, I have a lot of rapiers, or I've used a lot of rapiers. I do have a rapier, and other weapons that over time have lost their ability to spring back. But I feel basically, with the little amount of time I've owned this sword, it should be springing back for quite a longer period of time. But you can see there, just that bend there has just ever so slightly put it out of line. Now, once again, easy fix, but that is a note to Poker Armory to check maybe their tempering or whatnot, that it is losing its spring back to true, I think a little too fast for any sword. Now, outside of that, the sword is holding up really, really well. As I mentioned just a few moments ago, this sword is really, really good in the cut and really good for flowing. And in fact, I'll see if I can get some swishes here. This sword has a really, really easy swish to it. Like, I don't even have to try. So this sword also helps you with your edge alignment. It won't swoosh like that if your edge alignment isn't right. So when I'm doing flow work, even with upcuts, which I won't be able to do in here because I'll probably hit something, I can get a swoosh out of this sword. So as I'm flowing, I can really tell how well my cuts are, whether I'm doing wrist cuts, whether I'm doing elbow cuts, or which I can't do in here right now, or whether I'm doing full shoulder cuts with lots of body motion in it. This sword really helps because I can hear that swoosh. And I know if I'm getting that swoosh, especially when it's high pitched, I know I'm getting really good edge alignment. And as it starts to lower its pitch, I know I'm starting to turn my edge in the cut, and then if it completely disappears, I know I've botched my flow work completely and I should really stop and start again. So that's one good element about this sword, is the way it sounds can help you when you're sword fighting. Now, as I mentioned, this sword is really good with flow work, really good at cutting. A lot of people I sparred against were surprised when I cut at them and parried their sword or casted their sword away or basically broke their sword down to the ground. This sword hits really nicely. But at the same time, because of its weight and its fuller, when you hit your opponent, it's not that bad. So the design of this sword is really good. So if you're a person who likes to swing more than you do like to thrust, you don't do too much tip work, you do a lot of binding and finding and collecting and that sort of thing, this is going to be a really, really good sword for you. Now, I have a personal preference with side swords. I like them to be very, very nimble in the tip and have really good transition speed. Now, this sword has good transition speed in the cut. So when you're moving it around and you transition in your cut down in different guards, it's 950 grams. It's super light, it's really nimble. But where it has a little bit of a problem, I believe, is somewhere with the balance. And it might have to do with this part of the fuller down here in the forte of the weapon, the strong part of your blade, being a little too thick for a side sword. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned it earlier, it's getting similar to a long sword in thickness down here when it comes to edge. And it does have a taper here, which makes it quite light in the tip. But when I'm moving around with the sword, particularly when I'm sparring, I like to cut here and then false edge cut back really fast, and then come around, come across this way, come here, false edge back, and come down. The one thing about this is it seems to have too much weight, or it's very, very difficult to change the inertia of this sword compared to other side swords I've used. And after thinking about it and using it over and over again, I believe I've concluded it's a little bit too much weight here, and it's not weight isn't the right word. It's almost too much mass concentrated here, so the tip is quick. But as soon as you get the sword moving and you want to come back and false edge cut, come across, you know, transition the sword around, maybe do wrist work, do a lot of elbow work, as you're doing that work, you can start feeling here in the sword, even when I'm moving slow with the sword, I can feel a lot of mass here, which once again is why it's really good when you're binding and you're finding and you're pairing people's weapons, or you're collecting people's weapons, or you're trying to cut through someone's weapon. But if you are a person who likes really nimble swords, this sword is nimble, but I think it could be better for someone like me. I am a person who does like to thrust and then tip cut and then come back around and then come back around someone's sword this way. I kind of treat my side sword a little bit rapier-esque. And you know, there is the argument, what is the difference between some side swords and some rapiers? You know, there is that argument out there. So, once again, for someone like me, this sword is 9.5 out of 10. Losing some of its marks, maybe 9 out of 10 if you were to do a out of 10 rating. Losing some of its marks for the blade being maybe not springy enough back to true. And also that I would take like just a small percentage away, because I'd like to see this being just a little bit more nimble. I am getting used to it because I've been sparring with it so much, but I'd like to see it just be able to turn a little bit more. When I start doing slow turns with it like this, you can start to feel there's a mass that wants to pull the sword around. And keeping it with really small circles is actually a little difficult to do. Difficult isn't the right word. Let's just say it's more difficult than other swords to do, to do very small tip movement with the sword. So, without me babbling on about that too much and making this video too long, I could see this sword losing a little bit of mass in this area of the sword and still having a really robust edge. That's something for them to think about as an option for some people who order the sword. But overall, though, it's sort of a nitpick, and it's more of a personal preference. There are a lot of people who will probably want this sword the way it is because the demographic they fight in doesn't do too much rapier-esque / tip work with their sword, and all they do is cutting. Well, this is going to suit their needs. Okay, so final conclusion about this sword. I really like it. At my school, over the many, many years, I've had the privilege to handle many side swords. Albion side swords, back swords, arming swords. Our school has a lot of arming swords in it. Dark wood side swords. The school has made side swords kind of out of the thicker, more robust rapier blades. And also, our school has so many students, everyone seems to order a different side sword from a different company, and I just have the ability to actually spar against all sorts of different weapons. I have one friend that has like a dark wood sword, but he's got 3 different setups for it, with lighter blades, a blade that's got fullers in it, a heavier blade, and then he's got different sort of assemblies here. So like even that one person can like fight with 3 sort of slightly different weapons. So compared to long swords, there's a lot more variety at our school when it comes to side swords. Plus, I can actually also fight a lot of people who have rapiers as well. So I've been able to get a lot of experience with different sort of side swords, even though I wouldn't consider myself an expert as the way I am with a long sword, with a side sword yet. But I can give a conclusion that this is a very good side sword. The only flaw I found on this sword so far is that the blade isn't springing back to true the way it was a few weeks ago. But it's still not bad. Like, you can still bend it back into place, and it still holds its strength when you're actually using it for regular work. It's just really hard thrusts may bend the blade, and you might just have to bring it back. But I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier. That's not uncommon with a lot of thinner blade weapons as well. Eventually, they do stop losing their ability to spring back. My 6-year-old Reggiane longsword lasted for about 3 years, and it's still going on. It's like I said, it's about 6 years old, and it's starting to lose its ability to spring back to true as well. So anyways, without babbling about that too much, I can recommend this sword. It's like I say, I've got 3 products from Poker Armory, and they're all really well put together. They're just solid, and they handle really nice. And Poker Armory seems to be putting a lot of effort into their weapons and their R&D, their research and design, in order to sort of create really good, really nice flowing weapons. So yet again, another item I can recommend from them. I would like to see them make some improvements and maybe check out their tempering a little bit. And that's really the only flaw I can talk about on this sword. Outside of that, really nice sword. I enjoy using it every day. I quite often pick this up when I'm just sitting here watching TV, and will just sit in front of my TV and just sort of flow around with it, because it is, when it comes to flow work and comes to cutting, it is a really nicely balanced sword for doing cuts. It is really, really nice. Like just coming around without trying to hit my lighting and stuff that's in front of me. It just flows really nice once you get the sword coming across, going down low, coming across this way. Really nice sword. So without babbling too much, I think I'm going to cut this video here. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to know anything else about this sword, just drop a message below. I try to answer almost all people who post in my videos. So thank you again for watching. Please like and subscribe. I really want to grow this channel during these times. Right now, obviously with everyone working less and that sort of thing, getting funding to get weapons for you guys to review, so that you guys can be well informed about what you're purchasing in these times with your money, I think is really important. So if you guys can help me grow this channel, that would be great. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day or evening.